Grade 6, SSC Board, English subject, chapter reading, explanation and question answers. Who's the greatest? Emperor Akbar or Akbar the Great is known as one of the greatest rulers in the world. Not just because he had a vast empire, a very strong army, untold wealth, but because he was a good human being. He cared for his subjects. He had great respect for scholars, writers, poets, and artists belonging to different religions. He was a patron of art and culture. The 9 gems or Navratnas in his court were famous. Many people believe that of these 9 gems, Birbal was the closest to the emperor's heart. Akbar loved to pose interesting questions or problems in his court, and Birbal never failed to come up with an equally interesting answer. We don't know whether all the Akbar and Birbal stories that we hear today have any basis in history. They have been handed down over generations, mainly by word of mouth. Here are 2 of them. One day, the emperor entered the court with a very serious expression on his face. As soon as he was seated, he said, "I have a question for all of you. What should be the punishment for someone who pulls my moustache?" The court was stunned. Pull the emperor's moustache? It was unheard of. Flog him. Give him 50 lashes of the whip, explained one nobleman. That's not enough. Put him in jail without food and water, said another. Whip him, beat him up, hang him, cut off his offending hands. The agitated courtiers began to cry out. Only Birbal was silent. He was even smiling a little. What do you say, Birbal? What is your opinion? In my opinion, O giver of peace to the world, the offender should be given his favorite sweetmeats. Raja Birbal, are you out of your mind? Give sweetmeats for such a grave offence? The courtiers began to say. Birbal smiled and offered an explanation. Yes, who would be so bold as to pull the emperor's moustache? Only his grandson. When Akbar heard this, he burst out laughing because that is exactly what had happened in the morning. On another occasion, Akbar was relaxing with some of his courtiers. A few of them thought this was a good opportunity to shower praise on the emperor and get some favors from him. They began to compete with each other in praising Akbar. You are the greatest of the kings. You are the greatest of the kings or emperors that ever lived on earth. You are the greatest of all the people in heaven or earth. You are as great as God Almighty. You are greater than the God Almighty. Now, Akbar was no fool. He did not care for false praise. He stopped the courtiers and asked, "Do you all believe so?" "Yes," they answered in one voice. "All right then, prove it to me. Tell me at least one thing that I can do, but God Almighty will not be able to do. Otherwise, you will all incur our royal displeasure. You have till tomorrow morning to prove it." Akbar then left the place without another look at the courtiers. They were in a proper fix. They thought and thought, but couldn't think of any such thing. In the end, they went to Birbal. When Birbal heard their story, he told them not to worry. The next morning, the court was full. Everyone was curious to see what would happen next. "Well," said the emperor, "have you found a good answer to my question? Or are you ready to leave the court forever?" Just then, Birbal stepped forward and bowed low. "Please don't be angry with those who think you are the greatest, there's certainly at least one thing that you can do, but the God Almighty cannot. Akbar looked at Birbal thoughtfully. And what is that one thing? When you want to punish someone, you can banish that person. You can throw him out of your kingdom. But God's kingdom extends everywhere. The Almighty cannot banish anyone from his kingdom. Akbar's face was lit up with a smile. That was very clever, Birbal. While showing how I have an advantage, you have also shown that God is greater. I believe you. Akbar was so pleased with the answer that he forgave the courtiers for their stupidity. Meanings from the chapter: patron of art and culture, a person who appreciates, supports, and encourages art and culture. Flog, beat someone hard, especially with a whip. Agitated, disturbed. Incur our displeasure, make me angry. In a proper fix, in a tight corner, in a difficult situation. Untold wealth, lots of wealth. Closest to the emperor's heart, very dear to the emperor. Grave offense, serious crime. Banish, send away from a country or place as an official punishment. Who's the greatest? This story is about Emperor Akbar and his favorite Birbal. Well, Birbal was one of the 9 gems in Emperor Akbar's court. Emperor Akbar was also known as Akbar the Great. He was known and respected as one of the greatest rulers in the world. Not just because he had a huge empire, lots and lots of wealth, and a very strong army, but mainly because he was a good human being. They say he cared a lot about his subjects. He respected scholars, writers, poets, and artists, not only from his own religion, but also from different religions. He respected, appreciated, and promoted art and culture in his kingdom. That's why they say that he had the 9 gems in his court. These 9 gems, or the Navratnas, were the most learned men from different walks of life. Emperor Akbar loved to put interesting problems and tricky questions in front of his courtiers to test their skills and intelligence. And as the history says, or as the different stories say, that Birbal never ever failed to come up with interesting answers. That's why they also say that Birbal had a very special place in Emperor Akbar's heart. We've all heard lots and lots of stories from our grandparents and parents, and how Birbal has always, just always, managed to come out with amazing answers to the problems or the questions that Akbar has put in front of him. This particular story or this particular chapter has 2 such stories. One such story starts with the emperor storming into the court with a very serious expression on his face. As he takes his seat on the throne, he puts a question to his courtiers and asks, "Tell me something. What punishment would you give to the person who has dared to pull my moustache?" On listening to this, the courtiers are zapped. They have no idea as to who could dare to do such a thing to the emperor. So they come out with different sorts of punishments for the unknown offender. Many suggest that the offender or the culprit should be whipped. Many even say that he should be put in jail and given no food and water. Some even say that his hands should be cut off. Everybody has suggestions and everybody is screaming, and there's a big hue and cry in the court over this issue. There's only one person who is sitting silent and smiling also a little, and that's Birbal. So king turns to Birbal and asks, "Birbal, what is your opinion?" Birbal calmly responds and says, "Your Majesty, in my opinion, the culprit should actually be given his favorite sweets. Now, listening to this, the courtiers are stunned. They reply or they ask, Raja Birbal, are you out of your mind? You are actually suggesting that sweets should be given to a culprit who has dared to pull Emperor Akbar's moustache? Birbal smiles and calmly explains his suggestion. Yes, who would be so bold, he says, to dare to pull the emperor's moustache? It's possible for only and only the emperor's own grandson. And that's why this little cute offender should be rewarded with his favorite sweets. When Akbar heard this, he burst out laughing because that's exactly what had happened in the morning. And that incident had given Akbar the idea to put such a question to his courtiers. And he was further not at all surprised as to Birbal coming up with the very logic answer to his question. On a different occasion, Akbar is seen relaxing with his courtiers, and a few of them decide to take advantage of the situation and start flattering and praising Emperor Akbar. In doing so, they start competing with each other in their praises towards Akbar. Some said that he is the greatest of the kings. Others said that he is the greatest among the kings or emperors that had ever lived on the earth. Some start saying that he is greatest of all the people in heaven and earth. Some compare him to being as great as God. Others, since they want to take the competition level higher, say that king is greater than God Almighty. Now, after listening to all the praises and flattery, Akbar decides to put them in their place because he believes that none of the courtiers actually believe what they were saying. So, he asks them a question and says, do you all really believe what you are trying to say? And the courtiers answered in unity that yes, they did believe that the king was greater than the God Almighty. Once the courtiers said this, King Akbar said, all right, prove it to me. You show me or tell me at least one thing which I as a king can do, but God Almighty cannot. And he even warns his courtiers that if he failed to do so, then they would have to bear the royal punishment. And he gave them time till the next day morning to prove their point. The King Akbar coolly left the court. The courtiers were in deep trouble. They had absolutely no idea of any such thing which could prove that the king was greater than God Almighty. They thought and thought and thought, but they could not come out with any solution to their problem. So, at the end, as always, they approached Birbal. Birbal calmly heard their story and told them and reassured them that they shouldn't be worrying. The next morning, the court was full. Everyone was curious to see what would happen next and what solution or what answers would the courtiers come up with. When Emperor Akbar entered, he directly came to the point and asked, have you found a good answer to my question? Or are you ready to face the punishment and leave the court forever? As he finished the question, Birbal came forward and said, please, Jahapana, don't be angry with those who think you are the greatest, because there's at least one thing that you as a king can do, but the God Almighty cannot. Now, this kind of answer coming from Birbal got the emperor thinking, and he asked Birbal to explain his answer. To this, Birbal readily agreed and explained. He said, Your Majesty, when you want to punish someone, you banish that person. That is, you send away that person out of your country or a particular place as an official punishment, and that person gets thrown out of the kingdom. But God's kingdom is everywhere. Wherever we look, it's God's own place. So, Even if God decides to banish someone or throw someone out of his kingdom, that is not gonna be possible, because God's kingdom is everywhere and there is no place which is not owned by God. So this is the only thing that you, Your Majesty, can do and God Almighty cannot. Now, on listening to Birbal's answer, Akbar was very happy because it was indeed a very clever answer. While answering, Birbal had not only showed that Emperor Akbar could actually do something which God could not, but at the same time, he had also proved that there is no one else greater than God Almighty. So, he readily accepted Birbal's answer. Akbar was so happy with Birbal's answer that he decided to forgive the courtiers for their stupidity and unnecessary flattering, which had actually landed them all in trouble. Thank you. Question answers of Who's the Greatest? Question 1. Why is Emperor Akbar known as one of the greatest rulers in the world? Answer. Emperor Akbar is known as one of the greatest rulers in the world, not just because he had a vast empire, a very strong army, and untold wealth, but mainly because he was a great human being. He cared for his subjects. He had great respect for scholars, writers, poets, and artists belonging to different religions. He was a big supporter of art and culture. Question 2. Who among the 9 gems in Akbar's court was the closest to his heart? Answer. Birbal was the closest to the emperor's heart. The emperor loved to ask interesting questions or problems to his courtiers, and Birbal always came up with interesting answers. That's why it's said that Birbal was Emperor Akbar's favorite. Question 3. What suggestions were given by the courtiers as punishment that could be given to someone who pulled the emperor's moustache? Answer. When the courtiers heard that somebody had dared to pull the emperor's moustache, they were stunned. They said that the culprit should be flogged, should be given 50 lashes of the whip, should be put in jail without food and water, or his hands should be cut off. Question 4. Why did Birbal say that the offender should be given his favorite sweetmeats? Answer. Birbal said that only and only the emperor's grandson would be so bold enough to pull the emperor's moustache. So, he suggested that such an offender should be given his favorite sweetmeats. Question 5. What did the emperor ask his courtiers to prove and why? Answer. One day, when the courtiers had started praising the emperor and even called the emperor greater than the God Almighty, the emperor asked the courtiers to tell him at least one thing that the emperor could do and God Almighty could not, and so proving that the emperor was greater than the God Almighty. Question 6. What was the one thing, according to Birbal, that the Almighty could not do but the emperor could? Answer. According to Birbal, if the emperor wished to punish someone, he could banish that person from his kingdom. That is, he could throw him out of the kingdom. But God's kingdom extended everywhere, so the Almighty could not banish anyone from his kingdom. Thank you. Short note on Emperor Akbar. Emperor Akbar, or Akbar the Great, was one of the greatest rulers in the world. Apart from him being known for his vast empire, a very strong army, and large amount of wealth, he was more importantly known for being a very good human being. He respected scholars, writers, poets, and artists belonging to different religions. He was known to appreciate, support, and encourage art and culture. He was a man of great intelligence, and that's why he had great respect for Birbal. Birbal was one of the 9 gems or the Navratnas of the emperor's court. Question answers from the textbook. New words from the chapter. Subjects: people who live in a country that is controlled by king or queen. Pose: to ask or to put forth. Stunned, shocked. Unheard of, unusual, extraordinary, or never heard of. Flog, beat. Lashes, sharp blows. Whip, a long thin piece of material such as made of leather or jute attached to a stiff handle, mostly used for hitting people or animals. Nobleman, a man belonging to a high class because of his birth or because of his work or because of his thoughts or his designation. Courtiers, people present in royal court either as king's companions or as king's advisors. Sweetmeats, sweet tasting food or food items that taste sweet. Royal displeasure, royal disapproval, usually leading to some sort of punishment. Pleased, happy or satisfied. Stupidity, behavior or quality showing lack of intelligence or being silly. Untold wealth, lots and lots of wealth. Closest to the emperor's heart, very dear to the emperor or the emperor's favorite. Grave offense, serious crime. Banish, send away from a country or kingdom or from a particular place as an official punishment. Say with reasons whether the following statements are true or false. Akbar wanted to punish the person who pulled his moustache. The statement is false. Reason: the person who had pulled Akbar's moustache was none other than Akbar's own grandson. Akbar just wanted to use this incident to ask questions to his courtiers. Second, Akbar thought he was greater than God. False. Akbar never ever thought that he was greater than God, as he truly believed Birbal when he said that God Almighty cannot throw anyone out of his own kingdom. Next, Birbal thought Akbar was greater than God. False. Birbal only wanted to prove that emperor could remove somebody from his kingdom, but God could not, as the emperor's kingdom was limited, but God's kingdom was just about everywhere. So Birbal never thought that Akbar was greater than God. Question 4th. Write a sentence each about 3 of your friends. Each time you should say what your friend cannot do and yet pay a compliment to your friend. My friend Reema cannot tell a lie. My friend Radha cannot hurt anyone's feelings. My friend Ram cannot cheat anyone.